Did you know your breakfast could affect how attractive you are? Sounds surprising, doesn't it? A recent study led by Vizine and a team of researchers at the University of Montpellier in France might just have you rethinking your breakfast choices. You see, the Western diet is notorious for its high levels of refined carbohydrates. These are foods that have been processed to the point where much of their nutritional value has been stripped away. The usual culprits? White flour, table sugar, and ingredients found in many of your favorite packaged snacks. Now we're already aware of the link between these refined carbohydrates and adverse health effects. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, you name it. Yet this new study takes it a step further, suggesting that a high intake of refined carbohydrates could also impact non-medical traits. Case in point, your attractiveness. But what if we told you that these refined carbohydrates could also affect your attractiveness? Intriguing, isn't it? So let's dive into this fascinating study and see what it reveals. This study, conducted by Vizine and his team at the University of Montpellier, France, involved 104 adult participants, both males and females. Now here's the interesting bit. These participants were given different breakfasts. Some of them tucked into a high glycemic breakfast, which is full of refined carbohydrates known for their ability to boost blood sugar levels. Think white bread, sugary cereals, and pastries. On the other hand, others were given a low glycemic breakfast, one that included foods which have a slower impact on blood sugar levels, like whole grains and lean proteins. But that's not all. After having their breakfast, the participants didn't just go about their day. They stayed to complete a questionnaire which was designed to evaluate their typical habits of consumption of refined carbohydrates. This was to understand their usual dietary habits, especially their intake of foods high in refined carbohydrates. Now here comes the part which might make you raise an eyebrow. Additional heterosexual volunteers were brought into the picture. These volunteers had a pretty unique task. They were asked to rate the facial attractiveness of opposite-sex participants. The attractiveness was rated based on photos taken 2 hours after the participants had their provided breakfast. It's important to note that the study was designed to reduce cultural heterogeneity. This means that it focused on a specific group of people. In this case, only participants and volunteers who had 4 grandparents of European origin were included. This was done to ensure that the cultural background of the participants was as uniform as possible, thereby eliminating any potential cultural bias. In essence, this study was an intricate dance of breakfast choices, dietary habits, and attractiveness ratings, all conducted within a specific cultural context. It was a deep dive into the possible links between our dietary choices, specifically the consumption of refined carbohydrates, and how we perceive attractiveness. Now that we know the methodology, let's move to the findings. The results of this study are quite mind-boggling. After all, who would have thought that your morning meal could impact how attractive you appear to others? But that's exactly what this research uncovered. Those who indulged in a high glycemic breakfast, packed with refined carbohydrates, were found to be less attractive in the eyes of the opposite sex. This was true for both men and women. But it's not just a one-off indulgence that could have this effect. The study also found that regular consumption of refined carbohydrates, not just at breakfast but also at snack times, was associated with lower attractiveness ratings. But it's not all doom and gloom. Interestingly, those who consumed high-energy foods during these times were perceived as more attractive. So it's not about skipping meals or snacks, but making smarter food choices. So, next time you reach for that white bread or table sugar, remember, it's not just your health that could be at stake, but your attractiveness too.